Welcome back to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio. As the 2019 election looms in our headlights, think of all the things that the General Assembly was just the pick of a name short of doing last session, and put that into your urgency power box. We visit with former member of the General Assembly and now member of the House Committee on the Judiciary because one of our local police chiefs, Rochelle Brackney of Charlottesville, was in front of their committee talking about getting the guns out of the hands of those who would hunt humans. With Congressman Ben Cline. Do we have the clip?
Actually, had we banned or been able to ban some of the assault weapons coming into Charlottesville, I think we could have had a very, very better response from law enforcement or even Virginia Beach.
That part of her testimony really bothered me because I think it's a point of order, and maybe I'm slicing my bologna too thin, but she was nowhere near Charlottesville in August of 2017. She was the campus police chief for some Pennsylvania, I forget if it was Pennsylvania Community College or Duquesne or something like that, where she was the police chief on the campus. When this all happened, she had no connection to Charlottesville. Who is she to talk about what weapons could be, aside from the fact that most of the weapons were brought by the socialists from Michigan there? Tell us a little bit about what the committee was digging into this assault weapons ban that's yet again up on your docket. And did her statement bother you as well?
Well, this was the first time I had gotten to meet the chief, and it was during yet another hearing of the House Judiciary Committee on Gun Control. This is a regular occurrence with this Democrat-led House to try and take away the rights of law-abiding citizens. So bringing up a hearing on assault weapons bans is par for the course, and I was just listening to the back and forth, and in her response to one of the senior members of the Judiciary Committee, former Chairman Jim Sensenbrenner, who asked if hunting rifles should be banned because the AR-15 is used in hunting. And she said essentially and I'm going to paraphrase because she got bogged down in the exact wording that was used, but she essentially said any weapon that can be used to hunt people should be banned. Well, that's a pretty broad category, and I pressed her on that, and she was not very clear in her responses to me or to Congressman Stubbe after me, and it really took us down a road that was of concern for not just me, but for law enforcement as well. My friends in law enforcement definitely respect the Second Amendment, definitely respect the private right to own firearms, and do not want to take away that right. And so she was kind of speaking for herself, not for law enforcement, and was kind of an outlier during the committee hearing.
Well, and she was there representing the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, which I think is an important phrase because it implies that she's representing black law enforcement officers, but black law enforcement executives are police chiefs and police commissioners who are much more political than the police officer walking a beat.
Well, and that's an important distinction to make. There's a difference between those who are running departments and those who are out on patrol every day, interacting with the public, and they are the ones who are really recognizing that the public values its constitutional rights and is not going to be interested in anything that takes away those constitutional rights. And so I think that she maybe she was representing her organization, and that the brass do want to take away more of our gun rights. But I doubt that. I think she was speaking for herself, and not very well, because it took three of us to really try and pin her down on what she was saying, and none of us really came away any wiser as to what she meant by her statement.
Well, I think she was reading a statement that was handed to her by somebody, and that's why she had such a difficult time defending it and had to, kind of circle around. It's funny, after you and Congressman Stubbe buttonholed her for a while on this, even to the point where the most ridiculous thing I ever heard was the Congresswoman from Texas saying that you shouldn't harass a witness by asking them to clarify their statements. I thought that was is that a new thing in jurisprudence, that you can't cross-examine a witness and make sure you have their statement straight?
No, in fact, my colleague on the Judiciary Committee, who's also a freshman, should know that the rough and tumble nature of the Judiciary Committee is that we press our witnesses, and it's very similar to when you're in court and you're going to press a witness who is being very elusive and not answering the question. We're all lawyers on the committee, and we're all used to these kinds of witnesses on the stand who don't want to answer the questions. And so we're going to press, and it's not trying to be rude. It's not trying to demean. You certainly have the right to try and undermine your witness's credibility. That's something we do in court all the time, too. And so,
she helped.
To do that is normal.
When she helps. I was just worried for friends of ours like Daniel Rutherford down in Nelson County being, hamstrung in his prosecution of cases there, Ben. Congressman Ben Cline is on with us, and a joint town hall coming up next Wednesday, 5 p.m. In Bedford at the Central Virginia Community College with Congressman Riggleman, who will be part of tomorrow morning's program. I would be remiss, and I appreciate you coming on to talk about this attempt at Second Amendment infringement. You've been doing this as a freshman now there, but certainly you've seen it here in Virginia, and then you worked as chief of staff. I think it was chief of staff for Congressman Goodlatte before that. So you've seen a lot of this going on in Washington. Is this as close or as perilous, the Second Amendment, has ever been to being, at very least, amended, if not completely extricated from our Bill of Rights?
I would argue that those who are trying to take away our Second Amendment rights are more aggressive than they've ever been. And at the national level, you see a movement to the left in general, people running for president who have no problem advocating for gun seizures, as Beto O'Rourke did. But at the state level, it's acutely timely, because right now we've got these elections this fall. Our majority, which is defending Second Amendment rights, is hanging by a thread. If things don't go the right way, if we don't keep our majorities, which I think we will, then you're going to have a governor ready to sign gun control legislation that's passed, and Virginia could become a problem state when it comes to gun control. We could look more like Maryland or California or Illinois, where all the gun control measures in the world do nothing but take guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens and do nothing to deter crime.
And that's really, what we should be working on, is making a society where the idea of assaulting somebody with whatever weapon you're hunting them with, and in some cases words that are misused or mislaid. One last remission that I don't want to leave my listeners saying, hey, you had a member of the House Committee on the Judiciary on the radio, and you didn't ask him about everybody's favorite fruit, the fresh Washington impeach. What is going on? It seems like this is another case, and as somebody who's worked in the legal profession your whole life, you know about trying a case in the public. Usually the act of a defense attorney who has a guilty client but wants to taint the jury pool or something like that. But when I hear folks in Washington saying, boy, I sure hope the president doesn't impede justice, or your chair, Roz Nadler, saying that he thinks the president's guilty of obstructing intelligence gathering. I don't even think that's a crime, is it, Ben? And catch us up real quickly on the realities of what's going on with all this impeachment talk out of D.C.
Well, the reality is that the Democrats know their opportunities to try and impeach this president are running out of time because the election season's coming, and it's going to be revealed for what it is, which is a truly naked partisan attempt to remove this president and reverse a lawful election. And so they've tried it with this Russia investigation. They tried it with the Mueller report. The Judiciary Committee, quite frankly, all of the lawyers on my side have done an outstanding job of revealing exactly just how poorly this was done and how there isn't much there in terms of any kind of Russia collusion, any kind of obstruction of justice worth charging. And so they've essentially taken a lot of it away from Nadler at this point and shifted it over to Schiff. And so intelligence is kind of running the show now. You can see he's doing an even worse job than Nadler did because he's outright lying about the president and about the whistleblower report. And so I think that what we're going to see is an Inspector General's report come out about the FBI here in the next week or two.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be especially damning to a lot of those on the left who are trying to work within the FBI to get President Trump removed from office, and they're trying to get ahead of that by speeding this impeachment process based on this hearsay from the whistleblower report through as fast as possible, and the American people just won't stand for it.
Ben, I really appreciate your time. You as I said, you're a staffer for Congressman Goodlatte, who represented in the Virginia House for many years as well, though you still look like you're 25. So aside from that annoyance, now in Congress, just as somebody who's been an elected official and worked with elected officials, is this really an attempt to warn off any plain-spoken regular person that hasn't kind of trained up in how to work within the halls of governance and how to say things? Because it really seems like some of these things fruit from the president being a very plain-spoken, guy who in a meeting might say, hey, how about we electrify the fence? And all of a sudden somebody's leaking to the press that the president wants to electrify the fence when that wasn't what it was at all. But, perhaps a well-schooled politico would never have said that in a meeting where it could get leaked out, even if it was something he wanted to investigate. And this is a warning to anyone like, just the guy driving down the street. Don't run for school board. Don't run for board of supervisors, because this is the same stuff that will do to you if you're plain spoken and not a trained political type ruling class kind of person like the left seems to want.
I joke that after Star Wars and Luke Skywalker won, they destroyed the Death Star. The Empire struck back in the second episode, and so what you have following the discrediting of the Mueller investigation, it came up empty, and seemingly things were back on track. You have the swamp striking back, and essentially unnamed sources saying, with every phone call and every conversation, we're going to find something to bring out from the shadows against this president, to try and discredit him, to try and remove him from office. And with the American people, they made their choice. They are going to make their choice again in a year. And for Congress to get in the way of that and say, no, we know better, we're going to overrule your choice, that's unacceptable to the American people, and they're not going to stand for it.
Yeah, and it's a dangerous precedent to set as well, and I don't think they realize, or maybe they do and they just don't think it'll ever, the shoe will ever be on the other foot. Congressman Cline, I really appreciate, again, your time. It's cline.house.gov. Where you can find more about what Ben's been up to. But again, on Wednesday of next week, it's Central Virginia Community College in Bedford, joint town hall with Congressman Riggleman. Thank you so much for so much of your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Great to talk to you, Joe.
Thank you, and thank you for working over the police chief a little bit. I appreciate that. So, I'm sorry. See, I'm a plain-spoken guy. See, a politician would never use the phrase "work over," but so blame me for that.
We just ask the tough questions. That's the job I was elected to do.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio. For all of us here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy, I'm Joe Thomas. Till next weekend, so long, and thanks for all the fish.